Okay, so I think we are live. All right, I'm gonna go on my IntelliJ really quick and just make sure this YouTube is working. Hopefully the audio works too. Okay, I think the audio is also working. Alrighty, so okay, so I think we are good. Alrighty, so today we're going to be going over objects and classes still, but we're going to dive into concepts such as inheritance and overriding and polymorphism. So I don't have slides on this just because I feel like it makes more sense to actually show it, but I do have some diagrams to probably show you guys later to show you guys how inheritance works. So the basic idea is, for example, we can create a person class. And the idea of inheritance is you're creating new classes based on existing classes. So we're going to go through an example where we have a person class, a student class, and a teacher class. And a student and a teacher, they're both people, which means that logically in the real world, they fall under the person category. So then in Java, when you want to code something, you can make students and teachers come from the person class. So basically, for inheritance, it's a big part of object-oriented programming, OOP, and basically we have a superclass, which is also called a base class or a parent class, and then you have a subclass, also called a derived class or a child class, and basically the child class inherits from the parent class. So I think I have a diagram here. So basically, it's like this. So you would have class A, and that would be your superclass. And then you would also have class B, and that would be your subclass. So basically, whatever class A has, its methods, its fields, class B will also inherit. And there's different types of inheritance. There's the multi-level one and the hierarchy one. But in this tutorial, we're going to go over just the single inheritance. And I think I have another diagram here. So here, for example, we would have like a bicycle class, and then that would be our parent class. And then we could also have a mountain bike class, which would be a child of the bicycle class. So if the bicycle class has these two fields, gear and speed, and these three methods, apply, brake, speed up, and toString, that means that the mountain subclass or mountain bike child class will also have gear, speed, apply, brake, speed up, toString, and then you can also add additional fields and methods in your child class. And basically the whole point of this is to reuse code, because let's say if you want to make a mountain bike class or different types of bikes like BMX bike, road bike, that kind of stuff, you don't want to keep having to make the gear, speed, apply, brake, speed up, and toString. So this makes it easier to reuse code, and that makes our coding like just cleaner and it's better practice. So for inheritance, it's based on a is a relationship, which means that, for example, like a mountain bike is a bike, or a student is a person. So that's just kind of the relationship that it has. So what other theory things do I want to go over? Okay, so yeah, so objects of the subclass can also access the superclass members, and I'll show you guys that when we start coding. And in Java, you can't have multiple inheritance within classes, meaning if I have two classes, like person and UF student, like a subclass can't inherit from both of those. You have to use an interface, and that we'll go over later also in later tutorials. But basically, a subclass can only have one superclass, and the subclass does not inherit the superclass's constructor, but it can still call it, which I'll show you guys. And the subclass doesn't inherit any private members of the superclass, but the subclass can use protected and public methods, and these methods can access those private fields. So for example, we can still use the getters and setters of the superclass. We just can't actually access those private variables. Okay, so I think that is enough for us to get started. Okay, yeah, so we're gonna do something where we have a person superclass and then a teacher subclass and a student subclass. So basically, this is gonna look like this, the hierarchy one, where we have two things, student and teacher, that inherit from one superclass. So we are going to, I already coded this up before just so I can reference it, but we're gonna do this all over. So I'm just gonna comment all of this out. Okay. So basically, I made a person class, and this is gonna be our superclass. So you're gonna make the class like usual. So public class person. So you have this, right? So now when you make your superclass, I just think of attributes and methods that any person would have. So regardless if you're a teacher or a student, what are some traits that you'll have? So I think I put age and name. So every person has a name and age. So we're going to do private int age and then private string name. And remember, we are making our variables private here, so it protects our data, it encapsulates it. And then since our data is private, we still want to be able to access it and also change it. So that's where we'll need our getters and setters. So we're going to make our, I think our setters first. So there's going to be no return type, so it'll be void. Oh, actually, I forgot something. We need a constructor first. So I'm going to make a person constructor, and then this is basically where you initialize the values. So we're going to initialize the name and the age. So and if you don't understand what I'm doing here, you can watch my other tutorial on objects and classes, and then there I don't do any kind of inheritance, I just do a single class and show you how to use it. So I went over this keyword, constructors, getters, setters, and methods. So I'm just kind of gonna fly by that in this tutorial, but there is a other video to learn and reference with. Okay, so our constructor is created, and now we're setting the age. So we're just going to set this age equals to age. We also want to set the name. Okay, so setters are done, and then we're going to do getters too. So the getter is going to actually return a value for you. So we want to get the age, and then we also want to get the name. And then the return types here match their data types up here when we first declared them. Okay, sweet. So we have our getters and our setters. And then I'm just gonna make I'm gonna make two methods for the person class. So I think one behavior that all people share is having a birthday. They can all age. So we're gonna do public void have birthday. So basically that means your age is going to increase by 1. And then let's do a greeting. So I have one method, have birthday, and that has a no return type, so it's void. And then we're also going to have a method with a return type. So this one's going to be a greeting. And then we can just return, hello, I am a person. So here is our person class. And this is going to be our superclass that we're going to create subclasses with. So first, we're just going to see if this runs. So we're going to go over here. So this is our main, and I named it dog test based on a previous tutorial, but we can still use this for the main. So basically for inheritance, you're going to have your classes separately in different Java files, and then you're going to test it in a you're going to test it in the main. So let me just fix this over. So if we want to use the fields and methods in our person class, we have to make a person object first. I'm going to name it P, so we're making a new person, and then we have to call our constructor to make this new object. And our constructor, it takes in the age and the name. So we are going to put in, let's say they're 20 years old and their name is Josh. Okay, so that's a new person. And our methods are set, get, have birthday, and say greeting. Okay, so we can do p.have birthday, and now we can just check how old our person is. And then we can also do the greeting. Okay, so I'm just doing this just to show you how the person class runs, and it runs like normal, like any other class. And this is kind of like a review of the last tutorial. Oh no, okay. So I changed some things around. Let's fix this really quick. Yeah, so like I said, I did pre-code all of this just to make sure it all works and does what I expect it to. So there's nothing weird during the live stream. Okay, so it's running. Okay, perfect. So as you can see, our person named Josh is 20 years old when we first created the person object. But then they had a birthday, so then we added 1 to the age, and now it's 21. And then say greetings, hello, I'm a person. Okay, so that works like we expected, but now we're making our subclasses. So for our subclasses, here's what we're gonna do. So I made a student.java class, and this is going to be our first subclass. So we're gonna have public class student. So when you first make your new file, it's gonna show something like this. And the keyword to use when you want to do inheritance is the keyword extends. So we're gonna have that. And basically the format is this is like pseudocode, but it's going to be your subclass name extends, and then it's going to be your superclass name. So in this case, our subclass is called student, and then our superclass is called person. Remember, student is inheriting from the, sorry, 1 second, because student is inheriting from person. Okay, so we're gonna start making our data fields. Let me make sure. So like for student, we can add additional fields and methods that only pertain to a student, not a person. So for a student, they have like a GPA, they have a major. I think that pretty much covers enough to show what the student does. So we can do new variables, so private double GPA. And then we can do a private string major. Okay, so basically in the student class, GPA and major are only in the student class and they aren't in the person class. But since student extends from person, student also has age, name, and then these methods: set age, set name, get name, have birthday, and say greeting. Okay, cool. So let's do a constructor. So our compiler stops complaining. So since student has age, name, and GPA major, our constructor should define those two. So we're going to do int age string name double GPA and then string major. Okay, now we're going to initialize these values. There's no default constructor available in person. I think that shouldn't be an issue. I'm gonna type some more. Okay, so age and name aren't actually in our student class, right? But we can still use them. So for age and name, we're going to call the constructor in the person class, since the constructor in the person class can set the age and the name. And the one thing that's not passed along during inheritance is the constructor of the superclass. So we can't pass it along, but we can still call it. So what we're going to do super, and then we're going to pass in the age and the name. And this will call the superclass's constructor. So go in here, pass an age and name, and then here I'll take an age and name and it'll set it. And then we have to still set GPA major. Okay, so now our constructor is done. So the super keyword is just going to invoke the constructor in the superclass. All right, so now we have this set up. We have to do our getters and setters. So we're going to do set GPA. Set major. And then get GPA. Sorry, this is so tedious. I want to actually, no, it's okay, I'm almost done. Return this GPA, public string, get major. Okay, so getters and setters are done. And then now I'm just going to think of a method that pertains to a student. So a student can fail a class, and that will lower their GPA. So we're going to public void fail class. So basically, if you fail a class, it'll lower your GPA. So we're also going to do this.gpa, and we're going to minus 0.5 from it. And there's no return value because it's just changing a value. And for major, we can do public void. Actually, no, we're not going to do change major because set major kind of does the same thing. But, so here is what we're going to do. There's something called overriding. So, along with inheritance, there's an idea called polymorphism. And polymorphism basically means like many forms. And that just means that a single action can be implemented different ways. So what that means is we can override things. And overriding means that the child class has the same method as the parent class, but the child class implements it differently than the parent class. And this is called runtime polymorphism because at runtime, whatever is calling this method is whatever the compiler is going to go to. So for example, if let me think of a way to explain this. I think I'll just show you guys in the code what it means, but it pretty much has to have the same name as the parent and the same parameters as the parent. All right, so in our parent class, we have a method called say greeting, right? So based on the rules, if you want to override this method, you want to have the same name and same parameters as the parent. So I was going to copy and paste this. So it's literally going to be the same thing, right? But for overriding, the child class, which is going to be student, is going to implement this method differently. So in the person class, say greeting returns hello, I'm a person. But if you want this to be different in the student class, you can change it, and that will override implementation of say greeting. So we can return a string. So we can still call the say greeting method in the person class right here. By doing that, we can do super.sayGreeting. And this right here is going to return hello, I'm a person. But along with that, you can add and I am a student. So now, if you call say greeting in the student class, it should return hello, I am a person, and I am a student. So as you can tell, those two return statements are different strings. So that just shows how you can implement the say greeting method in different ways. So that is done. Okay, so we can start testing this. So we have a person. Let's make a student. Student s equals new student. And then for our student constructor, we have an age, we have a name, we have a GPA, and then we have a major. Okay, sweet. So let me think. Let's make the student fail class, and then you can print out their GPA. So I want to show you this part because fail class is a method in student, right? So we're gonna run this, and this should run as expected, and this should lower the GPA, and it should be 2.9. So alright, so do you see? So 2.9 is the GPA. But we can also, remember how I said before, we have access to the fields and methods in the parent class, which is a person class. So we can mess with the name and the age. So we can do, let's set the name to set name Bethany. Okay, so we're setting the name, and we can also access stuff in the person class too. So we can make them have a birthday. So remember, even though the have birthday method is only in the person class, the student subclass will inherit the have birthday method also, because that's how inheritance works, because we use the extends keyword. So in our main, I can show you guys this. So s.have_birthday, and then we can print out s.getName, s.getAge, and then these will reflect the changes we just did. So GPA will still be 2.9, name should be Bethany, and then age should be 19 because we incremented it with the birthday. Okay, so here you can see our changes. So this just shows that you can use the methods in the parent class still, and you can also use the methods in the child class. And we can also do this. So now I want to show you guys what the overriding stuff is. So we can do, okay, so we have our say greeting method, right? And this is going to show you how that the say greeting method is going to be literally the same method name, same parameters, but then it's going to have a different implementation. And at runtime, it'll determine it. So at runtime, it'll say, okay, P, which is a person object, is calling it. So it's going to go to the person class and find the say greeting. And then S is a student object. So then at runtime, it'll go to the student class and find the say greeting. So as you can see, these two print statements, they're different. This one is from the person object, and this one's from the student object. All right, cool. So that goes over one subclass and one superclass, but we can also have another subclass, because basically the rule is one subclass can only have one superclass, but it doesn't mean that one superclass can only have one subclass. One superclass can have many subclasses, like a person class can be the parent class to a student, a teacher, an athlete, a parent, like a bunch of other subclasses. So we're also going to do our teacher. So I kind of pre-coded some stuff here because it follows the same idea as student. But basically, for a teacher, they have a subject that they teach and a salary. So we have these two declared, and then our constructor does the same thing that we did in the student class. It has the age and the name, because these two are inherited from the person class. And then it also has its own variables, salary and subject. And again, we're going to use the super to call the constructor in the super class, which is the person, right here. And then this sets the age and the name. So those two are set. And then the teacher constructor is going to call this, and it's going to set the salary and subject. And then the same old setters, getters, but then for get a raise, it's going to increase the salary by 1,000. And then here, we're also doing overriding. So I'm going to name this say greeting. Okay. So the say greeting here, again, same method name, same parameters as the person superclass, but we're going to implement it differently. So this is going to return the super here is basically the person. So the person class's method say greeting, and that's going to return hello, I'm a person. And then we're going to also attach and the teacher. And this is how the teacher class will implement say greeting. So we can test this out too. So let's make a teacher t equals new teacher, age 45, name Rose. And then I think it was salary and subject. So salary 34, 5, 6, 7, and then subject is going to be math. Okay, cool. So we can do the say greeting, and then we can also do get a raise, and then we can check if it increased their salary. So basically here I created a new teacher object, and then I set these initial values. Age is 45, name is Rose, salary is 34,567, and they teach math. And then here, for say greeting, it'll have this. So this corresponds to hello, I'm a person and a teacher. And then here, we increase their salary by $1,000. So that's reflected in here. So yeah, this is pretty much a pretty quick rundown of inheritance. It just kind of shows you how we can reuse code a lot, and that's the beauty of OOP, because if I were to make more classes, I don't want to keep having to type like all these methods and these variables over and over again. I can just reuse this by using the extends keyword. So that's pretty much the key. If you're gonna make a subclass, it can extend from a superclass, and then you can also declare your own stuff in there. And let me see if anything else. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And the super keyword you can use to invoke the constructor, and you can also use this to get the methods and variables. So